So long as you're starting with high quality beef, cooking a good steak is as easy as throwing it on the grill or searing it in a hot skillet. But if you want perfect steak, and I'm talking steak with a rich, brown, crackling crust and a medium rare core that extends all the way from edge to edge, then you need to take your technique to the next level. Now, traditional methods like broiling, grilling, or searing in a skillet leave you with one problem. Your steak develops a temperature gradient inside it. So while the very center of the meat might be a perfect medium rare, as you move towards the outer layers, it becomes more and more cooked until you reach the edges, which have the dry, chewy texture of well-done meat. So the question is, how do you minimize this overcooking? So here's the thing, the more gently you cook your food, the smaller that temperature gradient inside is going to be. So for instance, if you cook a steak in a 500-degree oven, you're going to develop a pretty thick band of gray meat inside. Cook that same steak in a 250-degree oven, and that gray band shrinks significantly. You may have heard of a concept called sous vide cooking, and the idea here is to take that low temperature cooking to the extreme. With sous vide cooking, you place your steak inside a sealed plastic bag and then put that plastic bag in a water bath held at the exact temperature that you want to serve your steak at, say 130 degrees for medium rare. About 45 minutes later, you take your steak out of that bag and it's perfectly evenly cooked from edge to edge with no temperature gradient and no danger of overcooking. The problem is that sous vide equipment is really expensive. But there's an alternative, a regular old $30 beer cooler. Even though a cooler is designed to keep cool things cool, it's equally good at keeping hot things hot. So all you've got to do is fill it up with hot water, adjust the temperature with boiling water or cold water, and then place your bag meat inside it to cook. So long as you start a few degrees higher in order to compensate for the heat loss when you add your meat, it should be able to maintain its temperature for the 45 minutes required to cook most steaks, pork chops, lamb chops, chicken, or fish. You can cook your meat either in a cryovac-style bag or in a regular heavy-duty Ziploc bag. In order to get the air out of a Ziploc bag, put your meat inside it, zip it up most of the way, and then slowly lower it into the water, sealing it just as the air is forced out. You've probably noticed one glaring problem. Your steak develops no crust or color. You're going to have to add this after it comes out of the cooler. Now you can do this on a grill if you want to cook outside, but my personal favorite way is to finish it in a cast iron skillet. Just heat up some oil over the highest possible heat while you carefully dry the outside of the steak in order to help it brown faster. Season the steak generously with salt and pepper, and once the oil starts smoking, add the steak to the pan along with a couple of pats of butter. Cook the steak just until it's browned on both sides, about a minute or two, and then to finish it off, hold it up vertically with tongs in order to get the edges. The beauty of this method is total flexibility in terms of timing. Once your steak comes up to temperature inside the cooler, you can let it sit there for up to a few hours longer without worrying that it's going to overcook. Your steak is going to be hot and ready to sear as soon as you're ready to eat. You want to up your game even further? Then get yourself one of these guys. By combining the intense heat of a propane torch with a cast iron skillet, you can get a steakhouse quality char in a matter of moments. Just make sure that you shut off your smoke detectors first. It may take a little bit more time, but if you're willing to put in the effort, this is the best quality steak you can get at home. If there's one sauce that has a reputation for being difficult, a sauce that strikes fear into the hearts of chefs everywhere, it's hollandaise. Now hollandaise, just like mayonnaise, is a fat in water emulsion. Normally when you mix together fat and water, the fat's going to separate and float on top of the water in a greasy layer. But the key to a successful emulsion is to break that fat up into droplets so tiny that they stay evenly dispersed, causing the liquid to thicken and turn opaque. Traditionally, the way that you do this is by whisking together egg yolks and lemon juice in a double boiler until they're hot and frothy, and then slowly whisking in butter in a thin and steady stream. As you whisk, the butter breaks into minute droplets, while the egg yolk acts as an emulsifier, helping to keep those droplets evenly dispersed and thickening the sauce. What you get is a creamy, smooth sauce with a rich texture and mild flavor that's perfect for vegetables, fish, and eggs. But there's a lot of ways it can go wrong. If you don't whisk fast enough, or if you add your butter too fast, the sauce will end up greasy and broken. If you don't cook your eggs enough, it won't thicken properly, but if you cook them too much, you end up with broken scrambled eggs. The fact of the matter is, if you want to learn how to do it the traditional way, the road to perfect hollandaise is paved in broken sauces. But here's the good news. There's an alternative method that is completely foolproof, produces a hollandaise that's every bit as good as the traditional version, and takes about a minute start to finish. All you need is a small pot, a glass measuring cup, and a hand blender with a cup that barely fits its head. We start by combining an egg yolk, a teaspoon of water, a teaspoon of lemon juice, and a pinch of salt in the bottom of a blender cup. Next, we melt a stick of butter on the stovetop until it's completely hot and bubbling. It should register about 220 degrees Fahrenheit with an instant read thermometer. Pour that butter into a glass measuring cup. Now all we've got to do is stick the hand blender into the cup, start it running, and then slowly drizzle in our butter. As the hot butter hits the eggs, they start to cook. By the time you've added all of your butter, about 30 seconds later, the eggs are fully cooked and you've got a smooth, creamy, hot hollandaise sauce that is completely indistinguishable from one made using the traditional whisking method. Hollandaise is at its best right when you make it, but if you want to store it, your best bet is to keep it in a small, lidded pot in a warm spot somewhere near your stove. Just make sure that you use it within a couple of hours. Food Lab signing out.
Chicken breast pieces to the exact same internal temperature,
right,
but start them at completely different times so that we have one that goes in hot and cooks for a shorter amount of time versus the one that, you know what, we should weigh them before
we
they
can
go
do that
in as well. So we got 99 grams and 111 grams.
Yes.
One's going to go into a cool pan, and let's pick a final temperature.
Let me cool this pan quickly because it's already smoking.
So we noticed that he likes to live dangerously by pouring water directly into the hot pan of oil so that it aerosolizes, causing third-degree burns. Duly noted. What kind of surface temperature do you want to see?
400?
At least.
450?
So it's okay to put your hands on the chicken and then stick them back on the salt. Okay, also noted. Good sanitation.
What's going to live in the salt here?
Nothing's going to live in the salt at all. I'm just giving you crap. I think the interesting thing is going to be if we cook them both to the same doneness, if we pick a spot, center mass, and we decide on a final temperature.
155?
Is going to be the comparison of weight of moisture loss. I'm going to hypothesize that there's going to be more moisture loss out of chicken breast feet.
Right, because we're cooking at a higher temperature the whole time.
Surface to mass ratio. Reading 161 center mass. And number 2 is, of course, way down from that. 78 grams.
I'd say it's about 78%, given that we started with basically 100.
But it's not exactly. I mean, if you want to play all loosey-goosey with the facts, that's your business. 78.78. Okay. This is primary research, man. We're in Hero McGee territory. Are we close to the same temperature?
Yep. It's too bad they don't make chicken breasts in completely uniform
We're working
sizes.
on it. We're working on it.
84.68%.
I was guessing that the piece that went into the colder pan would, because of its reduced surface area, maybe retain more moisture, but indeed there is a relationship between time and moisture loss. So I mean, the piece that went into the hot pan stayed moister. That in order to quantify anything that's going on with your food, you've got to have measurements.
Yes.
Now, ideally, we would have been measuring time.
Right.
We didn't. But not only did we weigh things digitally in metric.
In metric, yes.
And we took careful temperatures, not only of the pan, but of the food. So we've got 3 data points. But this is still a pretty big trend. 84.68% versus 78.78%.
That's not, it's not insignificant.
Lunch. Lunch is up. This is enough to feed like 6 girls from New York.
Well, it's impossible to say without bias because I know that this one lost more moisture, but
I noted no difference whatsoever.
Nope.
So what we've learned is that it freaking doesn't matter.
Start with a good bird and don't mess it up.
Here's the other thing. Food tastes better if you're hungry. And meat is more tender when you're hungry because you produce more saliva. As Cervantes said, hunger is the best sauce.